Oh, just now I did a live streaming and I realized there was no volume in this. I was so disappointed. Anyway, I'm gonna redo this live streaming because since I already shared you and promised you guys I'm gonna do this, so we're gonna do it now, alright? So let's get started. If you guys are new here, my name is Esti. I am a Singaporean living in North Sweden. For the past 2 years, I've been staying in Da Nang part time for 3 months, and this video is about whether you should move to Singapore, Sweden, or Da Nang based on my experience. And I hope that all this information are helpful so you can decide for yourself where you want to live. So also such a disappointing, that I didn't check the video because I was actually using this not microwave, this mic, and I think I must have connect them wrongly, so it didn't work. But I'm gonna check later. So this video is requested by many of you guys. Most of you guys are from America and you've been concerned about the current situation and are looking for alternative way to live a better life away from USA. So I'm going to share with you what I personally feel. I won't call this an advice. I would call this my sharing of my personal experience, whether or not this is whether moving abroad could be your way of seeking a better life. So I'm going to just quickly go through, all right, what are the topic I'm going to cover. I'm going to cover cost of living in all these three countries, housing situation, transportation. If you're buying a car, how much it's going to cost you. I know a lot of American, they're used to having a car. So having a car in Da Nang, Singapore and Sweden, it's totally different, and it will shock you how much you're gonna pay for a car in Singapore. Make sure you stay tuned until the end so you can see and compare which country suits you best. All right. So I'm going to cover healthcare and insurance. I'm going to cover security and also safety, whether these countries are safe for you or your family or your partner. And also car ownership, school and education if you guys are a young family, and also job opportunity. You need to have a job unless you are like a rich pensioner, rich retiree, and you don't worry about money. So what you gonna do and how you going to live in this country. And also of course entertainment and lifestyle, the quality of life in these three countries, and also the pollution level. Nobody really talk about this, so we're going to touch on that. And also retirement options. And also, like, if you leave the country, you want to know what the country offers you, right, for your future, whether it give you something that you are trying to build, whether it is a business or whether it is a lifestyle. And also some of the problems with languages and communication in different countries. So let's start off with the cost of living. You guys know I have made a video earlier on about Da Nang. You could actually live quite comfortably between 600 to 1000. When I'm talking quite comfortably, I'm basing on just two-person who doesn't really eat too much, because me and my partner, we don't really eat too much, and we don't mind eating like local food. So Da Nang could be a very affordable place for most people. And also it is the food there I find is quite healthy, in my opinion, because there always a lot of vegetables, a lot of soupy thing. So if you're American, if you're not used to eating all this kind of stuff, maybe it can be a big problem. So maybe you might have to find other alternative way to live a life there, where or rather you should maybe cook more on your own instead of eating out. Whereas in Singapore, the cost of living nowadays is getting very, very high, higher and higher. Um, I could say that the price, I mean, depending on what kind of food you want, if you're going to eat at the hawker center, which is like the food court, it is still affordable, but I can feel like the price has increased for the past 5 years, from 20 to 30% higher. And also, transport wise, is very affordable if you take the public transport. So it's really depending on your habits, because if you are used to having a car, driving around, doing errands, you might find that Singapore can be a bit difficult, especially if you are used to shopping a lot, like us in Sweden, we used to shop a lot, and every time it's like the whole trolley is full. So in Singapore, you can't do that, because it's either you stay very near to the local grocery shop, you have to carry back like maybe once a week from the grocery to your home. It requires a lot of energy, and then because it's so hot there, you might not be able to get used to it. And also, if you are staying in Sweden cost of living is considered quite high. Transport wise is what I call is a means of transport. It's not a luxury thing, it's the everyday things that people do normally. They drive to work, they drive to buy grocery, they drive everywhere. So it's like a necessity here in Sweden. So in terms of cost of living, it's slightly higher in Norway compared to here, but we're not going to cover Norway. We're going to just cover on Sweden. All right. So first place, cost of living, the cheapest in Da Nang. The second cheapest, Singapore. And the third is Sweden. And also housing. Housing is extremely affordable in Da Nang. You can easily rent an apartment, small apartment, 1-2 room, between 600 to maybe $1,000, depending on your preference, if you want to stay near the beach or if you don't mind staying in the city. So in the city wise, it's much cheaper if you don't mind, of losing the beach life. And there's a lot to offer. Da Nang has a lot of apartment that you can rent very easily. In Singapore, it can be a bit difficult. 80% of the population stay in government subsidized flats. So I'm not saying subsidized, they don't really subsidize, depending on who you are. If you are a pensioner, local people, then the government will subsidize. But if you are an expat, and the government will not subsidize, so you literally have to live on your own saving to buy the apartment or take a loan, provided your jobs offers you a good pay and you have a very stable position in the company. Whereas in Sweden, it's totally different. It's different kind of scenario. We have apartment, we have villa, and then we have like we call that road hills, something like a terrace house. So there are rental and you can buy. But I think when you're staying in Sweden, if people say that, oh, you're renting a place, then they would think you are actually, putting money in your toilet and flush it. So that was what I was told. That's why we bought a house before. But I find that as you grow older, and if you're a young family, you need a bigger space, you probably end up buying a villa. And as you grow older, when your children move away, then you will end up buying an apartment. So it really depends on, what are your needs. So I think rental is still quite quite expensive depending on where you stay. If you stay in the city, in a bigger city, of course the rental is higher. And if you stay in a smaller region like here up in the North Sweden, rental is still a little bit controlled, but it's still not that cheap. So I can literally say the rental here in Sweden for a small apartment, it can cost between 500 to maybe 1,500 US dollar. And in Singapore, it's very expensive. It is at least, let me check if I have the statistic. I think Singapore is about, for a small apartment with 2 bedrooms, you would expect to pay around 300. Am I right? No, no, not 300. Singapore dollar, 2,500 to maybe, 600, depending on the size and where you are staying. In Da Nang, you can rent a place as cheap as, $500 a month to maybe up to 1,500 per month. That is quite a lot of difference, this. But you can't buy apartment or property in Da Nang unless you get a local people to buy with you. The same in Singapore, you cannot just buy the government apartment or the flats, because all these are controlled by the government, which is really good, because if investor were to come here and just buy out all the property, then it's going to be a big problem. Then the local people will not be able to afford the apartment. In Sweden wise, I think Sweden has also apartment that are, I wouldn't say control, but it's like monitored by the local authority, that they're not allowed to rent like a ridiculously high price. So, and foreigner can buy property here in Sweden, and it's not very high, the requirement. And in order for you to stay here for a long time, you need to apply for a visa, whether it is a work visa, a student visa, or a work permit. Whereas in Singapore, definitely work permit, unless you are retired, you are very rich, you don't mind renting. But to buy an apartment, you still can buy it, but then the price is ridiculously high. In Da Nang, you cannot buy. All right, you have to get the local people, which is, I think it's quite a good move, because otherwise, all the Russian will come and buy all the apartment, and then they will sell it at high price and spoil the market. So housing wise, this is something that you should think about. Price wise, houses, you can check on different places, like in Da Nang, you could check Da Nang apartment. There's a site called Da Nang apartment. In Singapore, you should check with the Singapore property. There is one, I know it's quite common, but you can Google. There are quite a few which are quite good. In Sweden, we call the website is Hemnet, Hemnet, pung.se, stand for Sweden. Go and check it out, and there you could see the property price, and how much you can loan, and also who is eligible to buy property. I think let me just see housing costs. I have a script here which I've written. It's always good to have, like, a guideline, like what I will talk about, so I don't go off the topic. I notice I always go off the topic sometimes. So transport wise, okay, this is also very important. In Da Nang, you notice people usually just travel by scooter or motorbike. very seldom people have car because you you can see people, the whole family riding on a bike with parents and the kids, two kids maximum, sometimes three, even a baby, which I think is really really horrible because I noticed the kids don't have helmet on, whereas the parent has a helmet on, which I think is doesn't make sense. Um, to buy a scooter, you can buy a brand new one between 1,000 to 1,500. So it's not very expensive. If you buy them second hand, it's even more cheaper. Whereas in Singapore, this is very crazy, all right? We have a policy called Certificate of Entitlement. This is like a license where you have to pay the government or the authority, the transport authority, to get the license to own a car. And it costs around 75 to 100,000 Singapore dollars. Is it Singapore? No, US dollar to just get that license. All right. So this is crazy. You, before you even get a car, you have to pay this license to own a car. And what more, on top of that, you have to buy the car at a retail price. You have to pay the road tax. You have to pay the insurance. You have to pay the import duties. You have to pay the tax. Right? Whatever tax. I think this is crazy. But this is Singapore way of controlling vehicles because they want to make Singapore a greener country where people don't have to depend on cars, because Singapore is such a small country. If you don't control the amount of vehicles, this is going to cost the country, this is going to pollute the country, and it's going to cost the life of the Singaporean. Because if the country is so small, people are more intense, the chances of getting hit right on the road is higher. So Singapore are very very effective with the transport, both buses and the metro. They have this metro in all parts of the corner, so unlike like 10 years ago, there are still some lines not built yet, but now they have completed the project, and this whole country is like so effective and really convenient, and the price to travel with the public transport is so affordable. But to own a car, you really have to be super rich to own one, unless you're working for a company that are able to afford afford you to buy, or let you loan a car, or maybe lend you the car. Then maybe you might have a chance to drive. But otherwise, car are for the super rich. In Sweden, the transport is like a necessity. We use it all the time, every day, in our daily life. But in Sweden nowadays, they are also trying to, promote the greener life by encouraging people to ride bicycle, or put or ride with their colleagues to work. This way, you don't use so much the car, and also this is a way to save money also. And I think this is a really smart idea, like, instead of traveling on yourself individually, you travel with your colleagues. You can build relationship and you can save money. I don't know, I just find that we really have to think about the environment. Even though Sweden is such a big country, chances of being polluted is not that very big, but then it has to start from somewhere small. And if everybody can do the same, it will make a lot of difference. In Da Nang is a huge problem. Even though Da Nang is known to be, the least polluted city in Vietnam, I still find that if you go into their SMHI website to check the weather, sometimes you can find, occasionally you will find that some days Da Nang air quality is not that good. So these are things that you have to consider. When I was there, we rented a bike, and when I come back, I dig nose, and then my nose is like all black. And also, when I use a cotton wool to wipe my face, it's black. So that is why if you go to Da Nang, you see most people they put a mask, and then sometimes they put some kind of special goggles also to prevent their dust from getting in. So I think, yeah, if you are used to riding, but then it's crazy there, Da Nang. The traffic is like, I wouldn't dare. Even though LG, my partner, who is used to riding a bike, he was a little bit shaky when he was driving there. And a lot of American people in this Facebook page, they say, oh, I've never ridden a scooter before. I don't think so there's any problem. Don't. All right, don't. Because I mean, even experienced biker find it so challenging to ride a bike there. What more if you haven't got any clue how this condition it is like? I don't recommend that you rent a scooter or just trying out. Don't. I've seen a post, I think just 1 month before we left Da Nang. There's this British guy. He just wrote a note. He went to rent a bike for a month. I think he paid like 2 million, which is not very expensive. He rented the bike for 1 month, and then he written a note, and then he put it at the petrol station, and he said, if anyone find this note, can you please call this number. I will reach out for you. This is my number. I dare not drive. I tried to contact the renter who rent him out the bike. The renter didn't answer his call, and he has no choice but to leave the bike at the petrol station. He gave the note to the petrol station owner, and the petrol station said, oh, you have to call them because they have to come and collect. You know what happened? It is because when he was riding the bike, he was so naive. He thought that he could manage. But when he comes to a crossway where it is cows, he got panic and he got scared. He did not drive the bike back to the store, and he just left the bike there. And he said, I don't want my money. I just want to, somebody help me to return this bike. He don't even want to go back there. So please, guys, all right, please don't take that risk because it's not worth it. It is much cheaper to take a Grab, which is ridiculously cheap, and you are much in better hand and it's safer. Okay? So Grab in Singapore, we have Grab there too, but they are not that cheap. In Sweden, we don't have Grab. Our Grab is us, like our parent who drive their kids to school or drive their kids to function. So we are the Grab. What more can I say about the transport? I think it's a totally different scenario. I actually felt a bit worried as I was walking on the street, because I realized in Da Nang, if you go to the night scene, you sit in the, not say coffee shop, but if you sit in a place where a normal restaurant, this guy, they order the beer by the carton, all right? It's not like per piece, per bottle, per can, no. It's by per carton. It's like 24, and they share among the friend, the 2, 3, 4 friends, and then they drink everything. And they, still ride a bike after that. I have no idea they were doing that, and I saw it with my own eyes. These people, they were like riding bike drunk. So for me, I wouldn't say that Da Nang is safe if you were to go out in the evening, by yourself on the dark street. People are drunk, you can get into a lot of trouble. In Singapore and Sweden, there is zero tolerance for drunk driving, which is really good. Then at least you feel safe, right? So, no. I'm reading this so that check nothing I've missed. All right. And then the next topic I'm going to talk about is the health. Health. If you get into accident in Da Nang, all right, and if you are in Singapore or in Sweden, it's always advisable for you guys to get a travel insurance. Um, get them before you go there, because then you can check from your own country where you are from and what does it cover. I think if you buy insurance from Sweden or from from abroad, the kind of policy may not cover you to the extent where, I don't know, maybe American insurance has lesser or not a very good coverage. But I notice the coverage from your travel agent, I think you should check and maybe have a second opinion, compare notes and see what does it really cover. Because you don't want to be in a situation where you might, you never know. We are all human beings. We can get into trouble anytime. So you want to make sure that you are fully covered. So I suggest checking with your local insurance company and also the abroad insurance company, and compare the this is something that you shouldn't miss. All right, you should check it out. In Da Nang, the healthcare, I heard, I've never been to the hospital or the clinic there, but I heard from friends who live there, they say that the clinic or the healthcare is really good. It's not that expensive, and also they are very effective. There are hospital with doctors that are able to speak English. For that, you have to pay a premium price, but that is again still very affordable. Whereas in Singapore, because Singapore, our local people are covered by what we call the MediSave. It's actually a contribution where you have to contribute to a fund every month. A certain percent will go to this MediSave, and the MediSave will take care of all your medical bill. So as a foreigner, you are not eligible, which means to say it is better to have an insurance that cover, if any, should anything happen to you, your ass is safe. All right. And also in Sweden, that's the same thing. Unless you are the permanent resident of Sweden, then you will get that privilege. But otherwise, you have to pay, and the medical fee here is extremely expensive. Okay, they are not cheap. So it's better to get an insurance that covers, to make sure that you are all safe if anything should happen. Security and safety. This is something that I think you should know. Like I said, in Da Nang, I feel a little bit unsafe because I felt like the traffic police, I don't see them so often. But in a lot of places, they have CCTV in prominent places. But you don't see so much of a police unless it's like odd hours, like the drinking hours. Then you will see maybe just one or two. Whereas in Singapore, there's CCTV every corner, and there's no way they miss it. So people are brought up in that habit where they have to obey the rules. And Singapore, you guys know, Singapore is a fine country. You are fined for chewing gum, or rather not chewing. You're fined for importing chewing gum and sell it to the people. You are fined from not flushing the toilet, or you are fined from littering. So we are used to the kind of discipline we call that. And for a foreigner who are not born here, you may find really strange because You know, you guys are used to eating chewing gum, right? For us, we don't do that because we don't litter. The government doesn't want to clean the floor from the chewing gum. That's why Singapore is known as the world cleanest city, and which is really good because you know you don't get stuck and nobody has to go down on their knee to remove these gums. That's why I think people are scared of the law, and therefore the crime rate is very low. In Da Nang, I think it is considered one of the safest city in Vietnam if you compare that to Ho Chi Minh or Hoi An. For Singapore case is we have a lot of imported talents from India, from Thailand, Indonesia, and all these people they have to go through the special program where they are taught to obey the local law and so on and so forth. Singapore is considered one of the safest country to live in Southeast Asia, and therefore, you know, you shouldn't be worried about the safety at all. In Sweden, I'm sure you have heard on the news, you know, there are always some uh, shooting on for the past 5 years. There's been shooting like almost every day. It's usually on the south of Sweden, near the capital of south in Malmö, which is uh, quite a messy place to stay. So if you want to stay in a safe place, you try to keep yourself away from that city and move up to the north. A lot of people from Europe, like from the Dutch, there are people from Spain, Greece that move up here because here is more peaceful, not so much of riots. No riots here, nobody there, or nobody even bothered to have riots here. So you see, it's really quite a lot of difference, right? I'm sure you can feel it. What about schooling? If you have kids, Da Nang has international school, but they are extremely expensive. They, if you want to have a slightly cheaper school, I think Singapore has an international school in Da Nang. You can check Singapore International School, all right? And also there are people who do homeschooling. I have a friend, Canadian friend, Maya. I don't know whether you seen our interview. She did homeschooling, but now she's about to think, you know, other way of educating her kids, because you cannot have the kid like homeschool their whole life, right? So now she is considering whether she want to move to other country that offers her children proper education. For Singapore, the standard of education is quite high. That is one of the reasons I left Singapore because as a teenager, we've been through hell because education is really important. I remember, you know, every time when I came back from school, I'm being forced to sit among my brothers and my cousins to do homework together. And we hardly any time to play. And most of our weekend, instead of playing, you know, we have certain hours that we have to set aside and do tuitions after every tuition, and these tuitions are not cheap. So I don't really have so much of a childhood memories for me, you know, being a child, having this opportunity to, you know, play things, because that time we don't have the telephone, right? So we don't really use that. So we want to go out and play. And even though during that time we don't even have time to go out to play, I remember most of the time I spend is in front of my books, which is not really good. Whereas in Sweden, that's the reason why I left and moved here, is because I don't want my daughter to been through that kind of unhealthy childhood life. I find that children should be children. You should be given a period of your time to be and develop and just enjoying your life being a child. You should be able to, take off your shoes, to step on the grass and play kickballs. In Singapore, parents are very protective. They want their children to like, oh, you cannot go bare feet, you step on grass. They are very disabling. I think they are overprotective. Whereas in Sweden, the parents don't really care. I'm not saying that they don't really care. I mean that they are not that protective, which is really good, because then when the children make mistakes, then they will learn from their mistake. That is how they feel like, that's how children should go through a process of like learning pain. So I know a lot of people might not agree with me, but this is what I felt. It is really good, because you really have to put the kid out there to face the world, not to be overprotective. Maybe I get a few comments from Singaporean people saying, hey, how come she said that? But I think nowadays Singapore also improve, not so protective, because they have to realize that they can't do that. Otherwise, the kids will suffer. I've written a long, long script, on here. In Singapore, there are lots of opportunities, but competition is very fierce, because Singaporean is known for importing overseas talent in the past 30 years, which means to say that, if you guys, you want to work there, make sure you have a good CV, all right? Your CV must stand out, otherwise you don't stand a chance, because Singapore has this experience of importing overseas talent that has a really unique working experience. So unless you are willing to step down on your pay and accept whatever the company offers you, and if maybe, who knows, if your experience is exactly what the Singaporean company need, they will definitely hire you, but don't expect to get a very high pay. Let's talk about Da Nang. Oh my goodness. Receptionist who work in the hotel that we stay in, she earned around $300 per month. All right, I don't know how they survive, seriously. And they work long hours, and hotel, they have to work shift. So I don't think so it's so much, especially if somebody who can speak English and can speak other languages, like, definitely have a slightly higher pay. So the company are sending their staff, especially the tourism industry, they're sending their staff to learn uh, Korean and Mandarin. So a lot of Vietnamese people now, they are able to speak other languages, not just English. Can everybody speak English? No. They are catching up, slowly. But I think in no time they will make it. Singapore wise, I find that Singapore job opportunity is very competitive. And in Sweden, oh God, you need to know Swedish. If you can't speak Swedish, you can also search job that doesn't require you to speak Swedish, but I tell you, it's not so often you find this kind of company. And even if there's this kind of company, just imagine how hard is the competition. Unless you are a special profession, like you are doctors, maybe you are a lawyers, attorney, who works in the special industry, maybe you might have a chance there. But I still feel like No. And even if you start a business here, I think chance for succeed, unless your business is really innovative, maybe you might have a chance. But otherwise, many people doesn't want to start the business here because the tax here is extremely high. And I think that is understandable because our cost of living in health care and retirement is really high. So that's something that you need to think about, right? um, for foreigner, I feel like it's not that easy here in Sweden. In Singapore it's much easier, even though the competition is high, but the chances is high because nowadays Singapore salary is getting higher and higher. Let's talk about travel in entertainment and lifestyle. Let's first talk about entertainment. If you were to fly or take a short holidays from Da Nang, it's really good because there is a small international airport that will takes you directly from Da Nang to Busan, to South Korea, to Singapore, Malaysia, Thailand, Indonesia, Philippines directly. I don't know about Philippines, maybe not Philippines, Thailand, right? And if you want to travel from Da Nang, it's really cheap because I think the air ticket was really affordable, and that's what a lot of Americans they who is on a 90-day visa, they either take a train, take a what do you call a bus to Laos or Cambodia, have their visa run, or they take a flight from Da Nang to Singapore or Malaysia or Thailand to get their visa fixed. So that's the only issue at the moment. Da Nang don't have a retirement visa, so a lot of people who staying there currently they have to go for 90 days visa, unless you have a special work permit or a student visa that entitle you to stay longer. Then you can skip this 90 days. And I heard maybe they are going to implement the retirement visa soon. I hope that is true. That could be a good news. For Singapore is very centered. I mean, we are surrounded by Southeast Asia. So to travel to various Southeast Asia country is much more convenient. I'm not saying necessary is cheaper, but it's more convenient and it's less hassle. From Sweden, people usually travel to Europe area like Greece, Spain, UK, or maybe Germany, Denmark, Norway, Finland. Um, they when they travel to Malaysia or to Thailand, that is during the summer when they have a longer holiday. So the distance is very far and it's very expensive. I just spoke to a couple who I met at the airport in Stockholm. They were visiting Sweden and they said, "Oh my goodness, the package tour just for 2 weeks is around 5,000 Singapore dollars, which I think is very expensive. But maybe to them it's cheap because Singaporeans are used to paying, high price for travel. And likewise, it's the same in Sweden. If you were to go by yourself, it's much cheaper. But if you go by tour package, it's much more expensive. So entertainment wise, it's can be easier in Southeast Asia than from Sweden to other parts, unless you don't mind going to a more European country. Quality of life. Mhm. Quality of life in Da Nang, if you love beach, yes. Singapore, if you love food and shopping, yes. Sweden, if you love nature, slow tempo, and no stress, yes. I think after staying in Da Nang for 90 days, I find that, being a foreigner to being in a place, you it is advisable not to rent an apartment, because if you rent an apartment, you are signed on a contract like 3 months. If you go elsewhere, like for 2 weeks, 3 weeks, then you're still paying rental. So for me, I advise you to like rent and then stay in Da Nang for like 2 3 months, 2 3 weeks, and then move around. Because if you just stay in Da Nang alone, and if you are the kind of boring people like us, we like to go to the beach, and we are very satisfied, and yeah, just being at the beach every day, that's a different thing. But if you are still younger and you prefer to move around, then it's not advisable to rent an apartment. Because with hotel, you can tell them, okay, I'm just going to stay like 2 weeks, and you know your schedule, and then you just leave. You don't pay the hotel rental unless you rent an apartment. Whereas in Singapore, if you were to like leave, because if you get a job, right? If you are a pensioner, then you can move around. But if you have a job, Singapore, the staff holiday, or we call that semester, it's not many days. I think I still can see people just have off days for 14 days a year. uh, there are some company that offers their staff more, but provided they have serviced the company for a very long time. So I would think that still Sweden is the best. If you were to stay here, work here, you have about 5 months, not 5 weeks of holidays. So you can take your holiday, either if you have a children, then you probably will have to force to take leave during the summer, because that's where the children are at home, and then you cannot have enough leave to travel further for a longer period of time. So but no matter how, it's still better, because and on top of that, I think Singapore, and I don't know about Da Nang, but I know that Da Nang, they always are big in the Chinese New Year. Then they will have like one whole week holidays. In Singapore, we have four religion, so we have quite a lot of holidays. Because the Chinese have a lot of holiday, and then we have the Malay holiday, we have the Indian holiday, and we have the Eurasian holiday, Easter, Good Friday, you name it, we have it. And the same in Sweden also. Sweden has a lot of holidays too. So I think if you were to think about the quality of life, um, maybe I think Singapore, no, I think Sweden has the best. It's not so stressful. You can spend more time with your family. Working hours are shorter. Whereas in Da Nang and Singapore, the working hours is crazy there. I don't know. What can I say more about this? The quality of life. And of course, Da Nang has also a issue with the weather, because I think during September, October, November, December, January, February, March, they are the raining season. All right. And then they have 3 months good weather, and then again June, July is the terrible month, because it can be extremely hot and very humid, up to 40 degrees Celsius. And also Singapore is, which is the whole year through, is like summer all the time, but we also do have raining season, which happen, I think, year end and also beginning. Even, even now in April, you can get some really, really crazy raining days. So when I was there, I was like, wow, I never seen this kind of rain for a long time, because I think Sweden we have rain, but the kind of rain is very mild. Singapore is like, you pour, and then you will just like, your mouth will be right open. I was so scared, when I was there, we were eating food at the hawker center, and suddenly we heard like a roaring sound. Whoa! And me and LG, we were like looking out, um, what the heck is that? It was raining, and it was so crazy, and we felt like, it's like almost, how do you call it, flood, almost immediately. And we were saying, oh my god, should we get out of this hawker center and move somewhere else? So it can be crazy. Whereas in Sweden we have this four season. It's really a different kind of lifestyle compared to Da Nang and Singapore, because Sweden has summer, autumn, winter, and spring, right? The spring is super short, the summer is super short, the winter is super long, and the autumn is just like, also super short. So literally, I could say Sweden 6 months of a winter. So if you don't like winter and you are scared of cold, and you don't know how to ski, you don't know how to ice fish, you're not interested in outdoor activities, definitely Sweden is not a country for you. Because I notice you have to be in the interest with the interest to like explore. And even though, me staying here for 27 years, I'm beginning to get sick and tired of the winter here, because I mean, I love winter from the beginning, but not now anymore. I just find that winter is so dark and boring, and if you don't have friends, uh, which I think you don't need a lot, but having one or two friends is enough to keep you busy. But still, you need to do something. You cannot be trapped in the home like 24/7, for half a year like a bear doing nothing. So you really have to have a hobby to in order to stay here, and you have to have the passion for outdoor activities, whether it is picking mushrooms in the wilderness, fishing, taking a short holiday with your caravan, or go for car camping. You really need to do that, because otherwise you find yourself depressed and trapped. I hope I'm not discouraging you, but I'm just telling you the fact, that this is something that I experienced. No sugar coating. I'm not going to sit here and lie to you. Oh, how good, oh, how nice, how perfect this country is, or each country is. There are always something. There are always pro and there's always con. Another thing I find is very important is the language too. When you move to a new country, you're not expected to learn, but it is good to learn. All right. When I moved here in Sweden, I was given the job opportunity to go for Swedish classes, which is really good. I'm really grateful that I could go to that. Whereas in Da Nang, the only way you can learn is maybe you go to a special school to learn, or maybe you learn by yourself through internet. There are expat group there that they interact or integrate with the local people, which is really good. But I do not know how effective is that. I've never been to one, but I know that they do have like once a week folk there, the older generation, or even sometimes the newer generation, they can't speak English. So the government or maybe the company are like sending their staff to go learn English or Mandarin or Korean, so that you could help to bring up the business a little bit. So if English is your only language, you could face some problem there. All right, but anyway, you have Google Translator, you can always use that. And even auntie, they take out the telephone and they show it to you, translate, tell me what you want. But for Singapore, it's not a problem because the first language in Singapore is English. So if you go to the granny or the papa, uncle, everyone can speak English. So it's not a problem. Whereas in Sweden, Swedish people, they're very good in English, but they are very shy. So they're not used to it. They don't mind, but it becomes so unnatural for them. So I don't know. My ex-husband was like felt like it was too inconvenient for him to speak to me in Swedish because I wanted to learn, but he refused because he find it's much easier to communicate with me in English and in Swedish. So I didn't learn so much. But over the time when I live here, I learned from my daughter. So my English level is like a teenager. not, not even a teenager, maybe a primary school standard. But anyway, language is really important. Um, you should learn the language. Not only to show respect for the country, but also it's also good for you, right? Self-development, we call that. All right, now serious thing, retiring and tax. This is a very important. So I'm going to read from my notes here, which I've written. I said, if you are seriously moving to Singapore, Da Nang, or in Sweden, you cannot ignore this two biggest question. How much tax will you have to pay, and what will your retirement actually look like? Let's break it down, all right? Now, for Da Nang in Vietnam, if you live in Da Nang for more than 183 days, you are considered a tax resident. All right, you are entitled to pay tax, income tax, 5 to 35%, depending on your incomes. And if you work for a company and your salary is low, you pay a lower tax. And if your salary is high, you pay a higher tax. And on property sales and investment, if you make money from investing, you are entitled to pay between 2 to 20% depending on the assets. You are not taxed on wealth or inheritance. And also for retirement, Vietnam doesn't officially offers retirement visa yet, but I think it will come. All right, after these cows, they will have to think about whether they should get more American Canadian people here. So most expect a long-term tourist visa like the 90 days, or a business visa, or a investment visa, in order for them to stay long term. So you will lively, well off, live comfortably between $1,500 to $2,000 per month if you want to live comfortably in Da Nang. I made a video to around 600. You could easily live here. If you are like me, I'm an Asian because I like local food, so I eat cheap, and I don't really spend money on all the tourist trap because I've been there, done that on my previous trip. So I'm not going to do that again. Tax is not a burden if your income is moderate. Retirement can be cheap and relaxing, but the visa issue can be a bit tricky. So, which means to say every 3 months you have to either go to Malaysia or a country around to apply visa before you could come back to Da Nang or Vietnam again. Okay, now Singapore, they have to pay this income tax 0 to 22% if you are a resident. If you are not a resident, maybe you have to pay more. If you earn USD 100,000 per year, tax are much lower compared to the US. And non-Singaporean does not tax on capital gains. Yeah, you don't get tax on capital gain. And no wealth tax or inheritance tax. That's really good, huh? If you inherit large sum of money, you don't get tax on that. And there's no specific visa, retirement visa. You either have a permanent resident or you are a financial investor, which means to say if you want to stay here longer, it's either you are permanent PR or a investor. And I think there is a minimum amount that you need to invest in order to stay here. Housing very expensive, especially housing and healthcare if they are not subsidized. And I think to stay here comfortably in Singapore, you need to spend at least 4 to 6 thousand per month. Tax are low, retirement expensive. You literally have to live on your saving. Uh, it's suitable for expat who is working class. Not easy retirement unless if you want to retire, it can be expensive unless you're wealthy, right? Tax are high in Sweden. Now we talk about Sweden. Extremely high, 30 to 55% of your income, and depending on where you stay, for income tax. Anyone who contribute to the healthcare and also the education and the pension, you can contribute. You have to contribute. It's not that you want to contribute, you must contribute. And around 30% for the capital gains tax is about 30% on investment income. No wealth tax or inheritance tax. I don't know what is meant by abolish, all right? No wealth tax, abolish. It means removed. I have to check that out. If you are a non-resident, EU resident, and if you retire here, you have to show that you have a stable income or you have a big saving, so it is enough for you to take care of yourself during this period, and of course your health if you need a health care. Permanent resident can be assessed, all right? Like for me, I'm a permanent resident. I can get access to the full retirement, but not the expat. You have to contribute. Cost of living is moderate. Averagely, you need between 2,005 to 3,005 per month to stay in Sweden comfortably. Overall, tax are high, retirement are quite secure. It's more affordable compared to US, and Sweden is ideal for people who want a peace of mind, long, strong healthcare. I don't know about this because healthcare takes times, operation takes times. You are on this queue system unless you are on an urgent case. Of course, the slow lifestyle. I hope I can give you guys all the information that you need, at least from my perspective, what I personally feel. I am not an expert in financial. I'm just literally giving you an estimated cost. So you have to do the homework yourself. But at least with this guideline, I hope it is helpful for you to, you know, evaluate and see which country suits you better. So in conclusion, I find that if you want affordable, average healthcare, don't mind about the language barrier, don't mind about eating Vietnamese food, um, and you cannot own a property, I think Da Nang is a very good option. Whereas Singapore, if you have the money, you want to retire, you don't mind paying much more for housing, and you like to travel, around the Southeast Asia country, and if you are a working class, you don't mind paying quite a high amount for rental, cost of living, and you are pursuing a career, and you need a strong education for your kids or for yourself. You need a secure, safe country to stay, and you don't mind a lot of people around you, and you enjoy the vibrant, different culture. Singapore is the one. Sweden, I think, is suitable for people who want to retire, have a bit of wealth, and want to live peacefully. Don't want people on your face all the time. You want to have a safe country, slow tempo, and a relaxing life. Healthcare maybe not so important, then Sweden is the place. All right. If you find this video helpful, give a thumbs up. If you're new here, consider subscribing. I think I'm going to bed. My eyes is closing. I'm still not used to the Sweden time yet. So I think I'm going to take a nap. But when I get up in half an hour, I'm going to come back on your comment and try my best to answer your questions. All right? So I hope to see you in my next. If you're wondering about my channel, I hope you go check out my playlist and also subscribe, hopefully. All right? See you guys. Bye bye. Thank you for the thumbs up and subscription.